Hi, Ben. How are you? Thank you so much for being here. First of all, I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy. And yeah, I just want to start by saying I'm a fan since I was a kid. And thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
I've had a tendency to say to people I've met in show business, "No, I've been listening to you since I was a little boy," and they go, "No, please don't tell me that."
Yeah, maybe that wasn't the best opening there. But anyway,
Yeah.
you've been in sales since you were 14 years old. You've been the number one sales rep in multiple industries, including the largest network marketing company worldwide at the time. You've written multiple books, including the Closer series, which sold over 5 million copies before you stopped counting, from what I heard. You've taught the People Builder program in prison. You're named the Attitude Coach in the Apollo 15, 16, and 17. You launched the 0800 number. You're the founder and executive of NAPS. Ben, this just keeps on going on. This introduction, if I keep it going, it's going to take the whole video. You've done a lot.
Thank you.
And yeah, so basically, what we're gonna do, we're gonna ask a couple of general questions on success, what it takes to be a successful master closer and sales infiltrator. Then we're gonna go into some questions I have on Facebook and from friends for you. So, yeah, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, so the first thing I gotta ask is just a little bit about your life and how you got into sales. What made you get into sales?
I never really thought, I read all these profound answers from people on that subject. Well, I was doing this, but then I thought this, and blah, blah, blah. I was raised by successful salespeople, entrepreneurs, all my aunts and uncles, my mother, my father, everybody in the family. And I was raised 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club in Atlanta, where all the movers and shakers belong, the head of Home Depot and Coca-Cola and so on. These are people I just grew up around. So my comfort zone was set very high from the very beginning. And my first sale that I can remember was a box of Krispy Kreme donuts. You may not know about them across the pond, but Krispy Kreme donuts are God's gift to mankind. And we sold them in boxes of 12 as a fundraiser. And I remember clearly ringing somebody's doorbell. And my father always said, step to the side. So they have to open the screen door. In the South, we had screen doors to keep the
Okay.
bugs out. Step to the side where they have to open the screen door to see you on the latch side. And when they open the door, hand them a box of donuts. Then put your hands beside you and explain to them basically what they just bought.
Oh wow.
So yeah. Looking back, it was probably something like the puppy dog clothes. But I won in a matter of a week or so. I won a brand new Columbia bicycle and came in number one, and I was hooked. But I remember literally, I can smell the donuts, and I remember what it looked like. The box had a little cellophane thing on top. As I handed her the donuts, put my hands down and stepped back. Then fast forward 2 or 3 minutes, I remember her handing me the money. I don't know what it was back then, $3, $5, whatever. But I had made a sale, I got the cash, and I was even more hooked. But mainly, it was what I said in the beginning. It was I didn't know any better. Everybody I knew was in selling. Everybody I knew owned their own business. Uh, Most were pretty successful, and so I just did that. It's like I was probably in my 30s before I discovered I could have been fill in the blank, something else. Never crossed my
Wow.
mind.
Wow. Okay. So, so it's in your bloodline, basically.
Yes.
There you go. So let me. So tell me a difference. A lot of people hear about sales closers, master closers, sales infiltrators. What would the difference be between a salesperson or a closer, master closer, and so forth?
Well, first we have in the sales business order takers. Customer walks in, wants to buy something. You write it up, and then they tell their friends that they are in selling. They're in order taking. Big difference.
Yeah.
Then you might become a salesperson where you understand what the game is and your job is to do more of it than an order taker. Upsell would be a great starting point. Learn how to upsell. Came in to buy a pair of socks, you leave with two pairs of socks because of the salesperson.
Hmm.
Then you have a closer who really understands what the game is and knows he or she's supposed to drive to a certain point. And
Hmm.
they're that's when the herd begins to thin. There are very few people. I read a survey the other day, I've seen it before, where most 80% of the sales are made on the 12th closing attempt or on the 12th visit or what have you. If that were true, there wouldn't be anybody in selling. Most people don't close once, never mind close 12 times. They don't
Yeah.
have the skill, they don't have the courage, whatever. It's just stupid. A lot of surveys, I'm probably guilty of it too. They make up numbers so they have something to write about. That's a made up number. A, there's no way of finding out who do you ask? And then B, it's just not true. And those of us who've been in selling a while, you read a thing like that, you go, who are you kidding? It's just not true.
True.
Then you have a master closer. A master closer knows what he or she is doing, knows how to do it, knows how to repeat it, knows how to overcome situations. Uh, and circle back around and close again and trial close and so on. And they're the people who get into the area where you're starting to make some pretty serious money. My problem was, and it's called say, being even a master closer was not good news for me. So I wrote the closers part two. Part one is the kicks, the blocks, and the
Hmm.
punches of selling, what to say if they tell you to get out and so on. But
Yeah.
the truth was, in my soul, I was raised as a Southern gentleman. If you tell me to get out of your house, I'm gone. I pick up my little vacuum cleaner or whatever I'm selling, I leave. Kirby Vacuum Cleaner, who I do some work with, is fond of saying the sales presentation is not over until you have payment or the police have been called. Well, I wasn't raised that way. So I had to figure out a way, and now we're going to sales infiltration. I had to figure out a way to be a salesman. That's what I was when I worked at Macy's. I ran around, did what I was supposed to do. And then I became a
Hmm.
closer. I'm not even sure I knew the title, but I always gave you two or three things to choose from. So we didn't hear yes or no. It was either the big one, the small one, the whatever.
Yeah.
And whatever item you bought of the 7,000 items in the housewares department, I had an upsale. If you buy a spatula, you probably need a frying pan or vice versa or whatever. So I always, no matter what you picked of the three I presented to you, it had upsales attached to it. I was starting to become a closer. I wasn't a master closer yet. That happened when I joined the direct marketing industry, MLM industry, and I learned the power of scripting and really going for the sale and so on. But I was still uncomfortable. I was the number one salesman in the world in that company and uncomfortable until I put a handle on it and I was able to call it sales infiltration. Starts on
Yeah.
page 257 of the closers part 2. It tells you exactly what a master closer is, does, and how to be one, but it also teaches you sales infiltration. Infiltration, the difference is, instead of, even with a master closer, I'm the salesman, you're the customer, also known as the opponent, and I'm going to wrestle you to the ground if necessary. I'm going to ask you for the order 12 times, right? I'm going to ask for the order 12 times and then overcome all your objections and so on. But if you're a sales infiltrator, you don't do it that way. First of all, you bring up all the built-in objections first.
Yeah.
You think I'm a salesman, so you think I'm a liar, cheat, and thief. Let's cover that right off the bat. And you think the product's overpriced, whatever the product is. Okay, let's discuss that and so on. But I lay the groundwork where when I'm dealing with a customer, I tell them up front, I'm going to treat you fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules, and I'm going to operate with you on a straight basis. That means I'll be straight with you. I want you to be straight with me. There's no question off the table while you're making this decision. As I'm doing this, there was team A, the salesman, versus team B, the customer. I'm forming team C. Team C the customer and I are equal partners on team C. We have encountered a problem that he or she had when they called me, or I created after I got there. But we have a problem that we are working to
Yeah.
solve, and there's no danger of you throwing me out of your house any more than you throw your mother out of the house. I become a part of the family, and I have scripting in there on exactly how you do it. That sales infiltration. So people say, what happens when I see this all the time in the sales groups. What happens when you encounter this objection? Well, I have
Yeah.
to stop and think what I would do if I heard that objection, because I haven't heard it in 30 years,
Right.
because I don't hear objections like that. I hear people ask for clarifications, etc. But that's it. The the 12 close one. I'd like to meet someone who has the courage and the lack of manners and the lack of skill, who has to close 12 times. I would be embarrassed. I close once, grand total. I have an 86% closing rate over many years. But the secret is I get in position first. And when I close, pull the trigger, I already know the answer. I wouldn't ask it if I didn't know the
Mm.
answers. They teach you in law school, never ask a question in a courtroom that you don't already know the answer to. I never close until I know they're going to buy. If I'm selling you over the phone and you can't see me, when I'm getting ready to close you, I feel face to face anyway, I feel an atmospheric pressure change. I know when your resistance is dropped, you've become my buddy. We're working on a problem. So, right before I ask you the closing question you could probably identify, I'm already writing your name on the order form. I know you bought. We're just down to the fine points. And
Yeah.
then my magic close, you know it, but let me state it here. Many people have heard it before. After I've spent time getting in position to expect a positive response to my one close, I say to you, Paul, based on what we've discussed, here's what I suggest I don't say it that way, but I want everybody to hear it. Here's what I suggest we do. Fill in the blank. Buy the vacuum cleaner, get the car, take the timeshare, whatever. Here's what I suggest we do. Pause. Fair enough? And the answer is, I'd probably say at that point, 80% of the time, yes.
Yeah.
If they say no, it's not no to the sale, it's no, it's not fair enough. To which I say, what would make it
Yeah.
fair enough?
Yeah.
And they tell me, and I go, fine, we'll do that. It's just that simple, and that's what runs it up to 86%. I've had people read that I close 86%. He's lying. How could he do this? Well, that's one of those people who runs through the woods firing randomly into the trees, hoping to get a squirrel.
Yeah.
I've only been squirrel hunting once in my life, but I fired about 10 times. I got 10 squirrels because I'm a pretty good shot with the rifle. And I didn't pull the trigger till the squirrel was sitting still where I could see him in an unobstructed manner. And then I pulled the trigger. And people say, oh, you were lucky to get the squirrel. No, I wasn't lucky at all. I went out in the woods looking for squirrels with a gun, got quiet, sat in one place, waited for the squirrel to go, hey, Ben, shoot me over here. Then I shot him. I didn't like it, by the way. It was the only time I ever went squirrel hunting, but that's how I got it, and that's how I close.
Just on a side note, if anybody's a squirrel, do not pass by Ben's house. Uh,
Even the deer are safe here.
you,
Usually in the evening, we have 4 or 5 deer in the front yard looking at me like, you looking for me? They know they're safe.
I bet you. I know you named one Bambi. Let me ask you something. Well, after the closers one and two, we also wrote the closers number three, and
Was
most
that
people don't
with
know about
you?
that yet.
The closers three? Was that with, oh, there's your name right there.
That
Yeah,
was a great honor, by the way. I couldn't
that was an
believe it.
honor for me.
Um, and the Closers 3 goes more into sales infiltration and more into it the modern day, more onto it online, offline, but also it just expands everything from Closers 2. It's 400 pages. It's literally written so you can just just get out and sell.
Yeah, and it takes you inside the bowels
Yeah.
of an actual sale instead of saying you ought to say this and you ought to say that.
The mindset
It
and
takes you,
everything.
yeah, it takes you through a complete transaction from beginning to end, conversation by conversation over some period of time. It was an excellent example of saying, part one, here's the kicks, the blocks, and the punches.
Yeah.
Part two, here's what sophisticated people really do with that information. Part three, here's them doing it. So I'm quite proud of it.
And
Thank you.
just so people will know, so the viewers here, um, it also features commentary and training, both by me, but of course also Ben Gay III, never before heard training. So I'm going to leave a link down in the description below for you guys. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, if you like these sort of videos, go ahead and click that thumbs up button. And think of somebody right now that can also benefit from this information and share the video with them. You and they will both be happy you did. So, Ben, real
So,
quick, let's just move on to the next question. So, these books actually became the foundation of the timeshare industry as well as other industries. I mean, you are a legend in this. Um,
uh, thank you.
a lot of people think these books were written for the timeshare industry. Were they?
No, uh, the story in the closers part one revolves around a property development, land sales. The timeshare business was just getting started when I bought the rights to the closers part one, rewrote it. It was just called the closers then, rewrote it and turned it into the bestseller of all time. By the way, you mentioned a figure earlier. We sold 5 million copies of the closers part one
Oh,
only
oh wow! I
when
thought
we,
it was both.
no, when we quit counting 20 years ago.
Oh,
Uh, but the closers part one was adapted and adopted by the timeshare industry early in their development. I have friends now who were selling back then who said that they would, and the timeshares used to be in a little more remote locations. They weren't in a
yeah,
hotel downtown. And he said, so they slept on the premises and they would talk about um, the sales manager insisted they sleep with the closers under their pillow so they could learn by osmosis, if nothing else. I have a book called The Art and Science of Resort Sales that I wrote
hmm,
specifically for the timeshare business. But even it believes you've read the other books first, so it shows you how to specifically apply them in the timeshare business. But there are so many industries who believe the book, part one, is about them, written for them.
yes.
The real estate industry thinks that. Many people in the car business believe that. Uh, I was flying in a Gulfstream one day when we were deciding whether to buy it or not on the way to Europe. We had a little demo flight, and the guy was talking about. He said something came up about sales training. He said, "Are you the Ben Gay sales trainer?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh wow, I have sold so many jets with that book. How were you thinking about us when you wrote the book?" And I said, "Well, uh, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about them or the car business or anything else. I'm a believer in, Paul, selling is selling. About 90% is the product. 95%, you go up to 95% with you becoming a person of class, quality, and substance. Because first they buy you,
Yeah.
and 4 or 5% is product knowledge. But I can, I when I started doing work in the home improvement, well, here's one. Home improvement is what I started to say. It took me a week or so to learn the terminology and be very comfortable with it. But after that, I was right back to selling. Somebody asked me the other day, what was the strangest thing you ever sold? And it's not strange. Everybody's going to buy one eventually, but it was pre-need funeral services for SCI, the I think it's Service Corporation International. They're the largest people in that business in the world, and it took me a couple of days to get comfortable with talking to people about their impending death. And then once I got a few little scripted lines down, could get in the house easily. And my closing rate in that business, by the way, was 100%. if you got in the house. That's the trick. You got to get in the house, then know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we had to set our own appointments. That was what I was hired to do, write the scripts for setting appointments, going in the home, and so on. And I discovered rather quickly that the script would get more people in the home, and then the script in the home. If somebody's willing to invite you into their house and talk about dying, they're in. Uh, this isn't a foreign concept to them. They've been to a funeral or two. They've heard the horror stories. And so the people in that business say, well, how did you learn so quickly about selling pre-need and crematorium, columbariums where you put the ashes and so on? How'd you learn so quick? I said, well, I listened to you guys and picked up a few terms. And then I went back to selling. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. If there are 10 steps in making a sale, don't ask me what they are because I just made up that figure. But if there are 10 steps to making a sale, there 9 of them are the same in selling a Chevrolet as there are in selling your pre-need burial needs. The other one is the car is a little different than a coffin. A coffin's a little different than a car, and that's sort of the difference right there. Everything else is just selling.
Would you upsell them life insurance while you're
Uh, haven't worked with them since they did that, but now many of them are selling life insurance policies just big enough to pay for the
Yeah.
service and the coffin and the so on. And you see those, I assume you see them in Europe, but we see them here all the time. Your life is, your rate is locked in. You know, you don't want to be hit with a $10,000 funeral bill right at the end. So you get a $10,000 policy, no medical exam necessary and all. That's pre-need. Before
Yeah.
we're going to sell you the property to be pre-need, the space or whatever. Now we'll sell you on how to pay for it in advance. Timeshare is now doing it on the back end. Here's a little insurance policy annuity where when you change your mind 5 or 6 years from now, your life has changed. We'll buy it back at full price.
Wow.
Uh, th- yeah. Well, all it is an annuity, but it's an insurance policy.
Okay. Ben, they say. Okay. They say all successful people have mentors. I've had mentors. A lot of people have mentors. Did you have any mentors, and who are they?
A few. I was, as I told you earlier, I was blessed by having a successful father who was a good teacher, and he introduced me to all his buddies who were the CEOs of big companies in and around Atlanta. So I had them. I didn't know the term mentor at the time,
Mhm.
but they were mentoring me and talking to me and being nice to me and taking me aside and so on. So that helped. And then I joined Holiday Magic Cosmetics, the big direct sales MLM company we were
Mhm.
discussing, on September 15th, 1965. And the guy who ran the ad and recruited me, Bill Dempsey, became a mentor. Uh, as long as I was in Atlanta about 2 more years before I moved up to be president of the company. Guy that was recruited along with me in the same meeting, Zig Ziglar,
Yeah.
became a mentor. He was 18 years older than I was, but he became a mentor. And then William Penpatrick became a mentor. He was the owner of the company and one of the most dynamic people I've ever known. He hired, once I was running the company, I don't know if I had the title president yet or not, but I was running the company. There was nobody above me but Bill, the owner. He brought a mentor to my office on or about my birthday in 1967 and introduced me to this sweet little old man named Dr. Napoleon Hill.
Oh wow! I
And
get goosebumps whenever I hear that. By the way.
yeah, and he said, I've hired Dr. Hill to work with you. He didn't use coach or mentor,
Hmm.
those weren't popular terms at the time, but he said, I've hired them to work with you so that when you have a problem or a question or you're scared, I want you to be able to pick up the phone and call him, fly him out here. You fly, he was in South Carolina, you fly back there, whatever. And I promise you that nothing you say to Dr. Hill will ever be passed on to me. This is your guy. I was explaining to somebody the other day and they said, oh, sort of like the Big Brother program. And it was, you know,
Pretty much.
he was pushing 80 and I was pushing 25, but yeah, or 26, whatever I was at the time, but he was hired as a bit to be a big brother for me. He'd come out sometimes, had a big conference table desk, sat about 12 people, and I sat in the middle of it. His place became the end seat on my left hand side. And sometimes he'd be there for the better part of a day and not say a word other than hello when he came in. He was just available if I needed him. And from time to time, he would look up and say, if nobody in the room, he'd say, "Son, I think you could have handled that a little differently. Are you curious?" I said, "Yes, please,
Wow.
please tell me." And along with him in that era, I brought Earl Nightingale into the company to become the voice of Holiday Magic and all of our affiliated companies in 25 different countries. And Og Mandino. If you were anybody in selling and personal development at that time, you either worked for us on a full time basis, or distributor or whatever, or you came into big meetings and so on. You had to go through me to speak to that crowd. And therefore, if only by random chance and luck, I answered a little ad in the Atlanta Journal Constitution one day and got into the business. I just I was calling on grocery stores for my father, and saw this little ad. If you want to make more money, know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial. Well, I didn't know what a marketing plan was, but I knew I needed to make more money. So I called it, went down September 15th, 1965, joined their business, and with it, over the next 2, 3 years, drew in and or inherited 15 or 20 of the biggest names in mentoring, selling, personal development on the planet. So I was one lucky dude.
Yeah. But you made your luck. You could have not made that phone call. And a lot of people don't understand that. I think success is opportunity meets preparation, right?
Right.
Now, let
Yeah.
me ask you something. Dr. Hill wrote multiple books. For people that don't know, I think he wrote the second best selling book at the time after the Bible. Was it Think and Grow
Think and,
Rich?
think and grow rich. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do see a similarity in a lot of people that reach the top. They're successful. They read a lot. Do you read, Ben? And if yes, what are some of your favorite books?
I have many, but I have 5 books going at all times. One here in this working office where I am today. This is not the office we use to impress people. This is where I really work. Uh, I have one here. It's over on my desk. I can't get to it. It's one I've read many times before, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. He ran for president of the United States on the libertarian ticket, but I'm not making a political statement. For me, it was ground moving, and I'd already moved a lot of ground at that time. Had already been quite successful, but it was one of those books that you read and you go, "Whoa,
Yeah.
I I missed that." Where was that? So that's one. I have one in the car at all times. In case I'm sitting outside a store waiting for Gigi or something. I have one in my briefcase. I have one in the bedroom on the reading stand, nightstand next to the bed at all times. And each one of them has a Ben Gay bookmark in it, so I can pick it up and go. The other thing I do, you never want to buy one of my books, used books at the bookstore, because when I stop reading, I take for the day, for the moment, I take a ballpoint pen and I draw uh,
Yeah.
a line. I was here. So I can pick it up and bang, be right back in it. And I have one, when I mention this, Gigi's always upset, but she's not here now, so I can tell you. I have one in the bathroom. I'm a bathroom reader. I
Okay.
grew up on the Reader's Digest. I don't even know if they still publish it, but the Reader's Digest, my mother gave me a love of reading. She stacked them up on the back of the toilet. And so when you sat, you had no excuse not to read. They were right there. I'm guessing 50 stories in every little edition. They were short stories. They were easy to read, usually had a positive outcome.
Hmm.
So I grew up on that. And if I came out of the bathroom in my parents' house, mother would say, "What'd you read about?" And you better have an answer. You were in there long enough to have read a story or two. And the closer's part two is written in Reader's Digest style.
I thought you were about to
Short.
say I wrote it in the bathroom for a second.
Short, manageable bites. Sales infiltration runs about 40 pages
Yeah.
last time I counted, but the rest of them are short, manageable bites. Very important parts about selling, but Reader's Digest version. And when I was writing that book, I thought, okay, could you read this chapter in one sitting in the bathroom?
Mm.
So I always get a kick out of people. A lot of the young people now are saying, "Well, I don't read," because they grew up on a screen,
Yeah.
and I don't read, therefore they don't mark up, they don't underline, they don't highlight, they don't get nearly the marrow out of the bone they should be getting. But I don't read. Reading is old school. Well, the people you work for read. That's how
Exactly.
they got there. And most of us who've got become successful and stayed successful continue to read. I do it constantly. And they'll say, I don't have time to read. I could follow anybody in the world around with a stopwatch and click when they could be reading,
Exactly.
unclick when they can't,
Exactly. You can wake up
you
an
don't,
hour earlier. You can read on the way to work. You can use audiobooks now on your iPhone. There is
right.
no excuse. No excuse.
Absolutely none.
You know,
All the knowledge in the world has been written down and or recorded and or videoed. Everything. And
yeah.
people say, well, I didn't know that. Well, shame on you. You should know it.
And you can learn from people like Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, historical figures, what they
Pardon my
wrote,
mug.
what they gave people. You can learn. You can have mentors throughout history. Yeah, and I used to read a lot, but I used to read the wrong type of things. And then
Mm,
a few years ago, one of my mentors, the one that gave me your book, by the way, he sat me down. He's like, listen, you have to read, and I couldn't. And he told me, listen, you don't read because you don't know how to read. And I'm not going to explain how in this video, but he taught me how to read, and that's when I became obsessed and I started seeing everything change around me. That was the difference. Because up to
right.
then, I used to make other people money. I could never make money for me. I used to either spend it, whatever. And then there's like, listen, you want to make money, right? Learn finance. You, learn how money works. What is money really? And I got really into it, and I just became obsessed. I mean, I don't stop now. It's either books, seminars, or audio books. I don't watch TV at all. Zero television. I'll watch a movie sometimes or a Survivor episode with my girlfriend, but that's only for her most of the time. But well, a movie I'll enjoy, a good movie, to be honest. I won't overdo it. Anyway, so let me ask you, what keeps you awake at night?
Nothing.
Okay,
I sleep soundly. I go to bed at a reasonable time. I wake up at 5:30 without an alarm clock, 5:30
5:30.
ish. This morning I woke up at 4 and I thought I don't feel totally rested. I looked at the clock, it was 4, so I went back to sleep. 5:30 on the dot, I woke up. So I try and get a good night's sleep, not always the full 8 hours, because if there's something I want to see on the news or what
Yeah.
have you, I might be watching the news at 10, 11 o'clock. But 11's about it. I turn off the phone at 10. So from 10 to 5:30, I'm pretty much off the grid. The rest of the time, I'm up and going. And when you operate the way I do at the speed I operate, I don't have time to worry about stuff. I used to. Being broke brings a
Mm.
lot of worries upon you. I was worried about the light bill. I was worried about the rent or the mortgage payment, as the case may be, and so on. But once I got that trivial stuff out of the way, I sleep like a baby.
Would you say being broke is one of the things that drove you to success?
Yeah, I answered the ad in the Atlanta Journal Constitution because I was
True.
broke. You have to adjust it for inflation, but I was working for my father at the time, calling on grocery stores. He was a food broker, I was a grunt. Uh, Calling on grocery stores, and I was making $100 a week. Now today, that's roughly 1,000 a week, but 1,000 a week putting a wife through nursing school doesn't do a whole lot either.
Yeah.
So broke was what got me rolling. I would have probably done well at something eventually anyway, but putting my first wife, Marcia, the late great Marcia Gay, through nursing school was my first kick in the pants. Suddenly, it wasn't just me and Jimmy Rucker uh, getting ready to get off work and go have a beer and chase girls. I had
Yeah.
responsibilities, and that sort of put me into gear.
Yeah. So, um, everyone has okay. So everyone has some successes and disasters in their life. Can you name some of your own?
Well, successes, we've sort of worn them out. I've
Yeah,
been
pretty
number
much.
one everywhere I've been. As much as I like to talk about myself, that's certainly one. One was, I'm just off the top of my head, I didn't know we'd be discussing this. One was when Jimmy Rucker and I bought into a mobile home park, and we were making a lot of money, and we weren't used to it. We went from $100 a week to $40,000 a month in 6 months. That today, that's almost a half a million
Yeah.
dollars a month. And I was still working for my father, so we were part time making half a million dollars a month, or 400,000. Um, I'd probably still be working for him, but on my birthday, he fired me. Called Rucker and me in, and he said, "I've got a birthday present for you. We're having dinner at the house tonight, blah, blah, blah. Uh, but would you like your present now?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "And Rucker, you guys are sewn together at the hip. So why don't I, even though it's a few months early, why don't I give you yours now too?" And Rucker said, "Oh, okay, Mr. Gay, thank you." He said, "You're both fired. Now, dinner is at 7 o'clock. Be there on time. Your mother's preparing a lovely meal." I said, "Excuse me, did we just get fired?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You're making a lot more money than I'm making. What are you doing hanging around here? You got to have the courage of your convictions. Go fly." And
Wow.
we walked out the door. And he said, "Leave your keys on Ann's desk." So I left the keys on the desk, walked out the door unemployed. I was going to inherit the company half an hour before that. That I thought. So that would be one. But now we're starting to make a lot of money, and we're getting footloose and fancy free with it, because
Mm.
this money will never stop coming in.
Never does
Make
stop.
that.
It never does.
Yeah. Right. So we invested in a mobile home park with two people. One was a prominent dentist in Atlanta, and the other
Mhm.
one I didn't really know, but he was the talker. And we didn't do our due diligence because we had lots of money, you know. And they talked us into buying in, and I put up 10,000, wrote a check for $10,000 sitting in the bank with the four of us. And the guy looked at it and said, "Well, excuse me one second," went away and cleared the check. It was drawn on that bank,
Wow.
cleared the check, then sat back down. And he said to the guy we were buying from, he said, "Well, that certainly takes the pressure off. Now, what are we going to do about the other $40,000 to avoid foreclosure?"
Oh
We,
wow.
yeah, that was sort of my reaction, because see, we didn't have that other
Now,
$40,000
now that's a
in.
close.
Yeah. So the
Oh
end
wow.
result, after yelling and screaming and being upset and everything, the end result was we owned a trailer park for the princely sum of $10,000 for about 5 minutes,
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
gone. Yeah,
That's
that was
insane.
sort of my reaction. And I've had lots of other little disasters along the way. Owned one of the biggest houses in Marin County, California. Had been head of Holiday Magic, and won't run you through all the travails, but one day the house was foreclosed on, the cars had been towed away,
Wow.
and I moved into this area, El Dorado County, California, Northern California. I moved into this area in a borrowed Mercury Bobcat, one of the worst cars Ford ever made. But the guy who I'd bought over 300 luxury vehicles from to give away as prizes lent me a Mercury Bobcat to drive into town. Then I didn't know the bridge set up uh, on the way up here to the Sacramento Lake Tahoe area. So with 50 cents in my pocket, I crossed the Carquinez Bridge, and they lightened me by 45 cents. So I drove into this town and this county in a borrowed Mercury Bobcat with 5 cents in my pocket. That's
Wow.
the bad news. We then began the 800 number industry, the call center industry, and we're back on top rather quickly again. But in that little brief moment of no house, no cars, my mother and my wife at the time, Marcia, suggested that instead of starting a new business and a new industry, I might want to look at getting a job. And I said, "What? You're talking to Ben Gay. I don't, I, I don't get a job."
I don't work.
I,
I
yeah.
create jobs.
So that was a little depressing one, and I've had others, but
Yeah.
that little depressing one.
Yeah. I think once you learn how to make money, you can always make money. It's the same procedure again. That's at least every time I make. I've been bankrupt a couple of times. You know this. I mean, you've helped me get
Mhm.
through that. Yeah. Um, and a lot of times is you make money, you lose, but then you can make more. Then you down again, and you can make even more. It's kind of like Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, you've got the experience it took to make it the first time
Yeah.
and maturity and a little sobriety from going broke. Earl Nightingale told me that he went bankrupt. I don't know if it was personal or corporate or both. Earl had gone bankrupt 3 times before I met him.
Wow.
Dr. Hill had been, I don't know if people go broke. I didn't file bankruptcy. I didn't have enough money to hire a lawyer to file bankruptcy. Probably should have. But, and I don't know if Dr. Hill filled out the paperwork and was bankrupt, but he was broke 3 or 4 times in his life before I met him. Had some shaky family relations with ex-wives, children not speaking to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived long enough, Paul, to get behind the scenes. And one of the things I've had to learn is to separate the lesson from the messenger.
Yeah.
J. Douglas Edwards, the great sales trainer, for whom, after he died, I wrote a book,
Hmm.
Sales Closing Power, taken from his seminar material and what he taught me. I'm convinced that maybe in his early days he was a good salesman. By the time I knew him, he couldn't close a refrigerator door.
Wow.
And I knew it. I was hiring him. I was behind the scenes. I had to advance him money to get him to the seminar. But when he got on stage, he spoke the absolute truth about selling.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to separate the message, the things he was teaching, which got me going in selling. That first 2 years in selling, all I knew was what Doug Edwards taught me. I had to separate him from the message. When Dr. Hill started telling me about all his failures, and I remember thinking, whoa, why was he hired as a mentor? Well, I had to figure it out. The message was different than the messenger. I got my flaws. I've had lots of them and still have a few, Gigi tells me on a regular basis. But so I'm acutely aware of we don't all succeed all the time, but you
Yeah.
pointed out something very interesting. When you fail, you don't lose the knowledge. You run out of money, but you don't lose the knowledge. So when you start again, you're starting way above where you first started.
Yeah.
And then again and again.
You have a
And then,
base.
yeah, throw in reading, as you were discussing earlier, and learning. That takes you up several more steps. What Dr. Hill did for me, we're about to do a series of seminars on. They're billing me as the last protege of Dr. Napoleon Hill. Uh, what he said, here's what I can do for you. He did a lot of things for me, but here he said, Ben, here's what I can do for you. Look at me as an old man. That was not hard to picture because he was, that you've encountered in the forest with a staff, a pole,
Okay.
and you're heading out as a young man down this path into the dark woods. And I step out and say, young man, I've been down this path several times, down and back, down and back. Do you want to just go discover all the things you're going to learn on your own, or can I give you a little guidance? He said,
Yeah.
now, if you're smart, you'll say, I'd like the guidance,
Of
please.
course.
Yeah. So I was smart enough to say, yeah, I'll take the guidance. He said, good. You'd be stunned how few people do.
I was
He
about to
walked through
say.
my, yeah, go
I was
ahead.
about to say people do not like free. They do not take free advice, and there is a cognitive bias that doesn't let them take advice. It's I don't know if it's ego. I don't know what it is, but they just do not listen. And you want to help them. You do it. They will look at it and find what's wrong with it or why you can do it, not them or anything, rather than just they will get stuck on some small irrelevant
Yeah.
thing instead of listening to the lesson and learning. It's insane. I don't get
Yeah.
it. I don't understand
E-
it.
ego, ignorance, and laziness, I
Yeah,
think pretty much wraps it all up.
yeah,
But yeah, it's hard sometimes to put your ego in your back pocket and listen to somebody else. But now, with technical things and setting up calls between us and so on, I go, I don't know. You're the expert. I don't know. I don't care. You're the expert. You tell me which button to click and so on. And I'm that way about so many things in life. I would tell a car story I won't bore you with now about buying a car, but the salesman was overselling me way
Mm.
past the point where I'd bought the car already if he'd been listening. And he said, "Now, well, let me show you some things you'll need to know." And I said, "Young man, let me tell you what I need to know. Three things. Where do I put the key? Where is the brake? And when those four things, excuse me, and where's the accelerator? And when one of those three things doesn't work, what is your personal private cell phone number? Because I'm not going to figure out how. I'm going to call you and you're going to come fix it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I have vice presidents in charge of everything in my life. I mean, I don't mean they work for me, but vice president in charge of car buying, vice president in charge of technology like you, vice president in charge of lots of things. And I let them do those things. And I stick to the one thing I know something about: personal development, public speaking, sales training.
Yeah. So let me ask you something now. Do you have any success habits or morning rituals you go by?
Somebody asked that the other day until my first little morning ritual. As soon as I'm consciously aware that I'm awake, that takes a second or two to know it's not a dream, I'm awake.
Right.
I instantly start my morning prayer.
Yeah.
And being a southerner storyteller, long-winded, my prayer runs a little longer than most people because I cover all contingencies and
Yeah. Yeah.
apologize for this, make sure I got it all covered.
I
Even
do the
though,
same.
yeah, good Lord's heard it 365 times, whatever 365 times 2 is, because I say the same prayer at night. But I say my prayer, I wake over, turn over, hug Gigi.
Aw.
I've already thanked God for giving me her. And then I go turn on the coffee. That's the beginning. Now, a little deeper answer: when I get to the office, it's out of reach as luck would have it. It's over on another desk, but I have a calendar where I plot out my life.
Mhm.
If you're supposed to call me back at a certain time, it's noted. If I'm supposed to call you, it's noted. If I'm supposed to go to the doctors, it's noted. But mainly what's noted is those things that I have to do in business every day, whether I like it or not,
Yeah.
and they're listed in the order of their importance. I've found that success, this isn't a great breakthrough in thinking, but I found finally that success isn't an event, it's a process. And if I do every day what I'm supposed to do, success comes out the other end. It's like grinding sausage. You put in the meat mixture and all, and you turn on the thing, and out the other end comes sausage. If you don't put in the meat, there'll be a gap where no sausage is coming out.
True.
That you got to keep the pipeline filled, the sausage machine filled. And so I sometimes feel when people say, they haven't seen me in a while, "Hey, what are you doing now?" I feel sort of embarrassed to tell them I'm still writing, I'm still selling, I'm still training other people how to sell. It's the same. I've been doing it for 52 years now. Same thing pretty much every day,
Mm.
day in, day out. And going down my list, Nightingale used to tell the story of an efficiency expert who went to call on Charles Schwab, who was head of US Steel or one of the big companies. The Ivy Lee sat with him all day long, just watched him work. And at the end of the day, he said, "Okay, what can you do to help me?" He said, "Well, get out a piece of paper, write down the five most important things you have to do tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
Schwab did. He said, "Now list them in the order of their importance to you. One, two, three, whatever." He said, "Now tomorrow when you come in, work on number one to the exclusion of all other things till it's completed, or you're up against a block where you can't go any farther until something else happens. Then you go to number two, and only then do you go to number two." Schwab said that's the most uh, important business lesson he ever learned. And unasked for, he sent Ivy Lee a check for $25,000. Well, this is in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Unsolicited, he sent him a check for, I don't make up a number, 500,000, $750,000. He said that little talk was the most important one he ever had. Well, that's the same system I follow today. Plus, instead of just the top five most important things, there are things I have to do every day, whether they're the most important or not. Check emails.
Yeah.
is on my
Because it
list.
might be an important thing that you don't know about.
Yeah, yeah. Check my tickler file I have behind me. I think you can probably see the edge of it, a big
Yeah,
rolling
yeah.
tub that's a file cabinet. This morning, what's today, the 6th, I think, 5th, 6th, whatever. I can't, on my list is tickler file. So I open up the tub, go to number 6, if that's the day, pull out the number 6 items. I have a monthly one, go to next will be March, pull out March, put that in the tickler file and so on. So some of them are sort of grunt work. However, that's what makes my day run. And people say, what's the biggest sales day you ever? One went around in the groups the other day. What's the biggest sale you ever made, or the most money you ever made in one day? Well, I usually don't answer those things because I'm not trying to step on the applause lines of people who are excited about making $1,000 in
Yeah.
a day or $1,000 a sale. But the answer is $14 million in one day.
Wow.
Uh, okay, but it wasn't, hi, my name's Ben Gabe, blah 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 blah. Uh, Fair enough, and I collect $14 million. It was because with this client, I had done the right things, paid or not, asked for or not asked for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then I got in a position where he hired me to do 10 seminars, then gave me 3% of the company and so on. So it was actually over 14 million, but a little surprise at the going away dinner was $14 million. Now I didn't post that in that group because some guy who just said, I made $750 selling a Ford yesterday. I didn't want to walk all over him. And also wouldn't want them to believe it was one sale.
Yeah.
Almost every sale I make is based on things I've been doing for years, even if it's a guy I've never talked to before who calls to buy something or hire me for a speech. One did late yesterday afternoon. I'd never heard of him before in my life, but he called me because somebody he knows said, you want to ignite your national convention, get Ben Gay in here.
Yeah.
Well, so that wasn't a sale. Hello, my name's Ben Gay, blah, 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 blah. Give me $9,500. It was, I was doing what I was supposed to do for years to get that guy to recommend me.
And a lot of people miss that. A lot of my business that I do, and a lot of things that I do, is a process over years. With sometimes I don't even realize it. It is a
Right,
compounding effect like money. And it's
right.
the same kind of thing, I think, in business and sales. It just compounds and then suddenly it just goes over. If you really think about it, I mean, it's kind of like making $1 million. If you have a $4,000, you only need to double it about 10 times, and you have $1 million, right? Because of the compounding
Yeah.
effect. Um, and that's
I
what
said, oh,
people.
would you work for me for a penny a day if I doubled
Oh
it
hell,
every
yeah, yeah,
day?
yeah, yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
of course. That's
People
what.
say, oh, no, I'm not going to work for a penny a day. Well, for 30 days, it's changes a bit.
Yeah, and
If your listeners don't know what it is, take a penny, make it 2 pennies. Next day, make it 4, and do that 30 times,
yeah,
and get back to us.
I think somebody actually lost a kingdom like that from a grain of well, it's said anyway, from a bean. I want a bean a day, just want to double it every. I mean, something like that anyway. That's what the way
Yeah.
the story went, and it's crazy. So, what would you say contributed mostly to your success?
Well, uh, I got a good start. My comfort zone was set high. That helped. Uh, I was beaten into submission to learn that effective presentation, I'll use the dread word scripts, that an effective presentation could make you a lot of money if you stuck to it. Took me from $100 a week to $40,000 a month just learning scripts. That helped. Setting up the success system we're talking about, doing the same thing every day, glamorous or not.
Hmm.
All of those things contributed. It to the point it's almost unexciting to talk about because I don't understand why everybody doesn't get it. It's like sales training. Many of us, me included, made sales so difficult you needed a trainer to understand it. Let me give you some tips.
Hmm.
Come early, stay late, work on weekends, especially in the beginning.
Yeah,
Get a quality product that's competitively priced. Doesn't have to be the cheapest. Competitively priced, and spend your day talking to qualified people. And while you're talking to the qualified people, make sure you have an effective sales presentation, also known as a script,
script.
to
Truth is,
to
the most I
explain it
ever
to them.
sold is from a script. I can't lie. I hate scripts, but the most I ever sold is from scripts.
Sure. And everybody's been in selling over 30 days works on scripts. Now we're talking about the quality of the script. Are we just repeating what you fell into saying out of laziness and slothfulness?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about a well-honed, well-crafted, proven script? As long as you're going to say the same thing every day anyway, why not say the same thing every day, comma, that is effective?
Yes.
I don't get it. I tell you why I didn't want to learn scripts in the beginning. It required work.
Not only
I was
that, it's kind of like people feel like, oh, I can't do this. It doesn't feel natural. Yeah, well, do it for 30 days. It will become natural.
Yeah, that is natural. Many of the things we've talked about today, if anybody's been to my seminars or watched earlier videos and so on, they will notice a striking similarity. When I tell a story, it's the same story, word for word, I told last month, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc. I figured out an effective way to tell that story. So why would I change it? I don't get it.
So, all this you just said boils down to one word: consistency
And discipline.
and discipline.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, okay, what is the one characteristic you're known for from your loved ones?
From my loved ones.
From your loved ones.
I hope it's honesty and integrity, but they might say first humor because
Okay.
if my lips are moving, I'm kidding. Uh, I kid about everything all the time. I'm Irish. We laugh at funerals. You know, my, my mother and I, when my
Great.
father died, my mother and I are at the thing at the church. He's just been taken away to be cremated, so we're at the church reception, and I'm working a crowd, and she's working a crowd, and as it happened, you know, how you sort of move around a room without knowing it. We backed up against each other, and I said, "Oh, excuse me," and it was my mother, and I said, "I'm sorry," and she said, "They keep asking what can they do for us." And I said, $100,000 would be nice. Let's start asking for that when anybody says it. And she and I, she was 100% Irish, doubled over laughing at my
Wow.
father's funeral. And I heard several people around the room say, ignore it, they're Irish. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, and let's go have a drink.
Yeah.
So humor would be it, but I hope honesty, integrity would come up, and loyalty. If you're my buddy, you don't have to look behind you to see if
Yeah.
I'm still there. I'm still there.
Okay, so what about the one characteristic you're known from people that don't like you?
Smart alecky, probably. Not in a selling situation, but in social situations. Some people don't quite get my humor,
Mm,
and I'm at the point where I don't care if they get my humor or not. Sometimes I sort of enjoy poking them if I know what that
yeah.
person's hot button is. Yeah. So, for instance, we have several friends that I can drive over the edge by saying the Trump name. You just say Trump, and they begin frothing at the mouth. You know. So maybe a little bit of smarter alekiness, if that's how you pronounce it. But I've curbed it quite a bit. I'm much better. Gigi has done that for me. Gigi has squeezed my hand more than once and sort of, enough, and never criticized me in front of anybody. But I know the look. And I must be tiptoeing up to the line. I think I'll back off. One of the problems I have, it's not a problem. It's made me a lot of money, but I'm reasonably quick-witted. For instance, I didn't ask you for the questions in advance.
Yeah.
People are always, you want the questions in advance? I said, no, I can, unless you go off into nuclear physics or something, I can pretty much handle myself. You know, but I was talking to somebody the other day, I think Noel Walsh on a video conference. And he said something along those lines. And I said, my problem is if we're sitting in a pub, not in business, but if we're sitting in a pub somewhere and you say something to me, when I start answering, I listen too, because I too want to know what I'm saying, because it's coming out. Blurb, you
Yeah.
said this. Blurb. Facebook and the internet and all has saved me. You don't have to hit send as soon as you're through typing. You can also hit delete,
Yeah.
and scripting keeps you on track and so on. But maybe being a little too glib and a little too quick. On the other hand, if I weren't, maybe you and I wouldn't be talking today.
Very true. Very true. I mean, you have to take people's flaws. If you change people's flaws, they won't have the same benefits, and that's what I was telling a lot of people. Like my girlfriend, for example, was, "Oh, you're so cocky, you're arrogant, you think you know everything." Like, yeah, but it's also called confidence.
Hmm.
You can't really.
Hard to have one without the other.
Kind of hard.
Yeah.
You can't just take things away. It doesn't work that way. It comes with the territory. You know, so one word that describes you, Ben. Just one word.
Handsome.
I had a feeling you're gonna say something like that. I love it. I love
When we walk into a restaurant or anywhere, people, the first thing they say, "Hey, how are you today?" I say, "I'm handsome. Thank you for asking."
it. Okay, so before I move on to some questions, on the matter of success, for somebody to actually make it and succeed in life, what are some quick tips you can give him?
Well, one is understanding what success is to you. My success may be different from yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly different than a guy, pardon me, who sold 5 cars last month.
Yeah.
Success to him is seven. I may have bought 7 cars last month,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a little different thing going. So, like goal setting, when you're establishing what success is, you got to be specific. I want to be rich is not a goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a generality that'll take you right down the tubes. You must be, Dr. Hill and I worked this out after we got into a friendly argument in Think and Grow Rich. He says, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And I said, unless he's crazy. And Dr. Hill said, what? He wasn't used to being questioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, unless he's crazy. I know people conceive and believe all sorts of things. Many of them are in loony bins, mental hospitals, and so on. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are still out walking around. So we had to together work on a thing. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve so long as it's specific,
Mm-hmm.
measurable, and achievable.
Yeah.
And and so those three things, and that would be the same of success. Define success for me. How can I be successful? What is success to you? Oh, I don't know. I want to be. No, 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 no. Specifically, what is success to you? Measure it. And is it attainable? I would like to make an extra $15 million tomorrow. Not going to happen. I'm not insane. It's probably not going to happen because I
Even though
can't think
you've
of
done
anybody
it.
with, well, 14 million. That's the reason I picked 50. And I worked on it for 30 years. But specific, measurable, and attainable. And then I would fall back on the old chestnut. Earl Nightingale says in The Strangest Secret that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And he goes on to say, so if you are successfully progressing towards a worthy ideal, you're as successful as anybody else on the planet. With my limited skills back in Atlanta, uh, in my early 20s, making $40,000 made me as successful as J. Paul Getty. If J. Paul Getty had joined Holiday Magic on the same day as I did, with the only $92.41 he had to his name, and we'd gone into a contest, I would have beaten him.
Yeah.
So, it depends. What is success to you, specifically, measurably, attainable, and understand that you're successful once you start down the trail. When Apollo 11 took off to go to the moon, it was success. There are two crews, one that brings the rocket down, stacks it up, and so on. It
Mm-hmm.
comes down from Huntsville, Alabama, on a barge. When that rocket got 1 inch over the dock, the people in Huntsville stood up and cheered. They were done. The rocket hadn't left Florida, but they're done. Jim Harrington and the launch crew of Apollo 14, 15, 16 that I worked uh, when now you got the rocket all stacked up, you wheel it out to the launch pad, 5, 9, 4, 3, 2, 1, uh, and it lifts off. When it gets 1 inch off the pad, breaks physical contact, you see them, the launch team, stand up and cheer. They did
Wow.
their part.
Yeah.
But to us sitting at home, we're still waiting for Neil and gang to get to the moon,
Very true.
land down and say Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. And then you go through the thing, you got to get back. you know, so I didn't consider
Which
Apollo
is the
11
goal of
or
the
any of
astronauts.
yeah, yeah. I didn't consider Apollo 11 or any of the other shots successful till they opened the hatch. They used to land in the ocean in a parachute. Open the hatch, and I saw three people come out, three people moving. Now we got success.
Yeah.
So it's at what point? It's like when you're selling, Paul. You always got to know at what point you are in the sale. If in early in the sale, to you, I'm selling Ben Gay.
Yeah.
I'm not selling you a car yet. I'm selling you Ben Gay. And we're laughing and joking and getting to know each other. And I'm giving you any sincere compliment I can come up with, etc. So I don't get it confused. We haven't sold the car yet. I wasn't trying to sell the car. I was
Exactly.
trying to sell me. The launch team at NASA wasn't trying to get it to the moon. I mean, obviously they were
Well,
sort
yeah.
of. They were trying to get it 1 inch off the pad. When it was 1 inch, they broke out the champagne bottles.
Got it.
So know where you are in the process.
Excellent advice, Ben. Excellent advice, as always. So, if it's okay with you, I'd like to go on to some questions by our viewers on Facebook. And also at this point, leave you guys, yeah. If you have any questions for Ben Gay the Third, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. We will be doing another interview, I hope, and, and Ben will answer those questions for you.
We will.
We'll do one more specific to sales and maybe even live next time. But make sure you leave those questions in the comment section below. And don't forget to like the video, guys. It really helps out. Spread the love. Sharing is caring. So, Mario Panagotopoulos, which is a very good friend of mine, actually, he's got a couple of questions. One is, how do you find a product to sell?
Well, you may be drawn to it. Uh, it's obvious you saw it, you liked it, and so on. Or it may be, what are you trying to do? Make a lot of money? We'll find out something that makes a lot of money when you sell it. I have a
Mm-hmm.
friend, I alluded to him and some of his buddies earlier, who sold corporate jets. Make some serious money. There you go. But you also have to be willing to go 4, 5, 6 months without a sale. And some people can't emotionally get through that. He had come to terms with it. Uh, when I was a young salesman at Davison's Macy's in Atlanta, they had a lawnmower. I won't bore you with the details, but it was uniquely designed. And the company had gone out of business, and the buyer had bought the last 500 units. And he put a $5 spiff on each one. Today, that'd be $50.
Special
And
performance incentive fee. It's a bonus for people that are watching that don't know what that is.
yeah, he, so it was called the Foley Quad Cut. Had four blades underneath a deck that looked like a boomerang or a bat wing. I was fascinated by it, but the company went out of business because nobody could sell it.
Yeah,
Because it didn't look like all the other lawnmowers. Well, I was young and stupid, and I was excited, and whoever sold it to us explained it to me, and in 5 minutes I got it. Plus, I'd owned a lawn mowing service when I was 14, so I knew the advantage of having a 36-inch, excuse me, a 42-inch wide swath instead of a 30 or a 24-inch swath. Less times around the yard, get more jobs done. I was revved.
yeah.
I sold all 500 Foley quad cuts, all 500 in a month,
Wow.
without any special advertising. If you walked onto the housewares floor and you'd ever heard the word lawnmower, I gave you a presentation and I sold all 500 of them, which made me, for the time, a whole lot of money. I was really impressed with it. But that's one that I liked, but it fell into my arms. I didn't go looking for a new lawnmower. I thought we'd pretty much figured out lawnmowers once we went to a rotary blade instead of a reel cut. So that I've fallen in love with products that I was wrong about. I sold the first Pong games. That was you go into a pizza parlor, put in a quarter. There was a screen built into a table, and a ping pong ball, digital, went back and forth. And it was so slow and primitive in those days. Um, you could hit the ball from your side and go get a Coke, before the opponent got it back to you. So, but I thought it was great. So I sold a bunch of them, primarily as an investment. Put them in a pizza parlor. Once a week, you go in, empty out the coin box. The owner gets half, you get half, and that's how you make a lot of money. And it made sense to me. I was wrong. Uh, they didn't make the kind of money they would, so I quit selling them. But enthusiasm sold the ones that I did, and in a few cases where I had the wherewithal to do it, if the people were really upset, not willing to wait for their investment to pay out, I bought them back from them. Same enthusiasm as with a
Yeah.
Foley quad cut lawnmower. So it can fall in your lap. But if today I had to suddenly go make a living to support this operation and, pay for the house and the car, fortunately they're all paid for, but let's assume I had a mortgage payment and this and that, I would sit down and figure out what I could make the most money at selling honestly, fairly squarely, decently by the rules. Where's the money?
Mm.
I could sell Girl Scout cookies because I'm a believer in Girl Scout cookies, hand over fist, but there's no money in it. So that wouldn't be high on my list. And if I needed money now, that changes the equation somewhere. I'm not going to go start stirring up leads to sell a Gulfstream 5 or whatever they're on now. That would take a little longer than I might have at that moment. So you have all sorts of decisions to make. But when you're done, make sure you're excited about it. If appropriate, make sure you would sell it to your mother at full price. If it doesn't pass that, an oil tanker, that might be an issue. But with normal products and services, if you wouldn't sell it to your mother or to your best friend,
Yeah.
or to somebody you want to do business with in the future, that may be, the bell should be going ding, 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 get away from that.
Yeah.
So there are many, many answers to the question, but they all come down to quality product, competitively priced, talking to qualified customers.
I think you just answered his second question as well, which was what are the characteristics of a good product? You just nailed both questions right there.
Yeah.
Um, and the other question he has is can anyone really sell anything to anyone? And if so, where do you draw the line? When is it? It's counterproductive not trying to sell just anything all the time. Like,
Uh,
when do you give up?
in that well, I don't ever give up because I don't start unless I know I'm in the right place to begin with. So I don't have to give up.
Also,
I may not get started,
yeah,
but I don't have to give up.
makes
Okay,
sense.
so let's answer as best I recall. Let me answer them in order. Can someone, let's use me, can I sell anything to anybody, anywhere, anytime? Yeah, within reason. But here's the answer: I won't.
Mm,
I won't sell anything but a quality product that's competitively priced to people who are qualified to buy it. That might be emotionally, financially, spiritually, desperate need. Uh, so I sold pre-need funeral
yeah.
services. That takes a lot more skill than at need. When they pull up with Uncle Charlie in the trunk of the car and he's been dead for 12 hours, it's not real hard to sell him on a coffin and a plot in the ground. When you're talking to a person who presumes they're going to live forever or for another 10 or 15, 20 years, that's where selling comes in. Excuse me, but I could sell either because we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be left on the side of the road, we have to do something with your
True.
body.
True.
Your survivors do. So there's that. But no, I wouldn't sell anything to anybody, although I probably could. And where's the line? You know where the line is. Uh, Everybody in their heart knows, if I'm out on the raggedy edge of honesty and quality and so on, uh, you know where the line is.
Or
Uh,
when,
I've
how do you, what about if it's not selling? Do you think it's the product or yourself?
Depends. If it's a good product that's quality product that's competitively priced and so on, it's you.
Yeah.
Uh, if it's not quality, it's the product and you because you decided to sell it. We used to have a car here. I assume they inflicted it in Europe even before we saw it. The Yugo.
Hmm.
The Yugo was made in Yugoslavia. It was a rolling piece of garbage.
A friend
Now
of
I'm
mine used to drive one that and he used to pick me up and go to work. It was hilarious.
yeah, that's a good
And I
way
had
to
a car,
describe a Yugo.
and I wasn't even embarrassed. It was so funny. I wanted people to see me. I had an RX-7 at the time, but I really wanted to be in that Yugo. It was hilarious.
It's like being in a clown car at the
Yeah.
circus, yeah. But I was doing a seminar for a bunch of people, automobile people, but they were from different dealership, different brands, and so on. I was answering the questions and so on, and this guy raises his hand, and he was in a little cluster of poorly dressed salespeople,
Mm,
cheap sport coats and so on. Salespeople aren't known as fashion uh, guides or icons, but this crowd was even worse. And they their spokesman raised his hand. We want to know how to sell more cars. I said, okay. What are you selling? And they said, Yugos. And I broke up laughing. I said, is that the only dealership in your town? No. Why in God's name? I could question why you choose to sell cars. There are people who don't want to sell cars. I
yeah.
could question that. But if you decided to sell cars, why would you be selling Yugos? I don't know how to sell more. Get a gun, get them in the closing room, and tell them that you're going to start with the youngest child, shooting them until they sign the paperwork. I think that would work. You know, I don't know what standard line scripted. I will have to admit, Yugos always had rear window defrosters, so your hands wouldn't get cold while you were pushing the car. Uh, you know, so why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
And by the way, before the seminar was over, I said, "Let me tell you something. Here's an odd way that I operate. Even here, it's a group thing,
Mm,
but even when one company has brought me in to talk to their people, I immediately, like I do with customers when I'm selling something, I immediately get on your side. I am here as a fellow salesperson to tell you what's best to do. Get out of the Yugo dealership today before the sun goes down." Now, I don't know what happened, but I've heard rumors from people in that thing that they went back, cleaned out their desks, and left en masse, however you pronounce it. And, they say, well, did you hate doing that to the Yugo dealer? No, we stopped him before he killed somebody
he was
else.
a Yugo
You know,
dealer.
yeah, yeah. What difference does it make? He was a Yugo
I
dealer.
actually sold him a funeral.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben. David Taylor is asking, if you woke up with no money and knew no one, what would you do the following week?
I started the 800 call center industry.
Yeah, that
That's
was.
it. I drove into let me repeat, I drove into this town. I'm now sitting in one of the bigger houses in our area. I drove into this town in a borrowed Mercury Bobcat with a
Yeah.
nickel in my pocket. Having given speeches, by the way, it said you could take me and drop me in a parachute naked over any area where there's humans there, and I would emerge from the forest owning a business within 30 days. And when that happened, they towed away they foreclosed on the house, towed away the cars, and I was lent. I think he implied he'd like to have his car back in 30 days or so. Apparently, buying 300 luxury automobiles from him had a termination, an expiration date on it. The loyalty didn't go endlessly. I sort of thought he'd give it to me as a token. Uh, but when I when I got in that situation, word got back to one of my mentors, the great Merle Frazier, who is a wonderful gentleman, retired and living in Jackson, Mississippi. Merle called me. I don't know how he found out about it. We didn't have the internet or cell phones, but he called me and said, "Well, Ben, you've been talking about they could drop you out of a plane anywhere in the world in a parachute naked and you'd come out in 30 days owning your own business." He said, "I'll be watching, son," and hung up.
Oh wow.
That I moved in this town in March. We opened the National Communications Center, the first call center in the world, June 15th, uh, hoping we could sell some stuff rather quickly before all the bills came due because I had no money when I signed the lease for the office building. I had no money for the little house we rented, and the phone lines were $10,000 a month each, plus overtime. That's what an 800 number used to cost you.
Wow.
Uh, and so it was sort of important we signed up at least $10,000 worth of clients before the month was up to pay for the one phone line. We had a couple more than that, but the one phone line. So I've been there. Tell your good friend that I've been there and I've done it. And I always sort of do it mentally. Uh, when I reduce myself down, the employees outsourced. I still use the same printer I used 25 years ago. The difference was I used to own the printer, the print shop, and everything in it.
Right.
we gave it to them and said, you go do that. I don't want to do that anymore. Now we use them. So I still sort of have the equivalent of 125 employees scattered around the area, but I don't have any of them on the payroll. So every time I start a new thing, like when we went strictly into book publishing and sales training, I look at it as if I've just been dropped naked out of a plane again. And I don't Jay Ringer and Looking Out for Number One, great book. Uh, some people would think it's old school, but great lesson in it. Among the things he teaches you have no touchy money. There's money, like if you're playing at a gambling casino, if you're smart, you take money off the table and that doesn't get put back into play
Mm.
because suddenly you're losing. If you're up $100 when you in the beginning, when you leave the casino, you should still be up $100. You might have been up 40,000, down 40,000, whatever, but that $100 came off the table, or the $500 or whatever, and that's your no touchy money. So when I decided to strictly go into uh, selling sales training material and speeches, and I still sell for clients, but they're client companies. I'm
Mm.
even then, any money we had put aside up to that time from the call center business was never touched. I stripped myself naked again and said, this is go or no go. I had a business partner years ago who was an Italian wannabe mafia guy, sort of on the friend. He knew some mafia people.
Italian. Just all you have to say is Italian.
Yeah, I'm not sure he was ever engaged, but he liked to pretend like he was. But although he was an accountant, he'd been the assistant treasurer of the state of California and so on. He said, Ben, here's how we're going to, he was with me in the call center business. He says, here's what we do. We take a cigar box and we open it up. How much money are we willing to put into the cigar box to risk on this business? Pick a number,
Yeah, yeah,
$1,000. He said,
$1,000.
okay, good. Now we shut the lid. Now, any money we take in, we put in the box. Any money we have to pay bills with, we take out of the box. When the box is overflowing, you put the excess money out on the table, we'll divvy it up and we'll spend that on ourselves. If the box runs out, we're out of that business. We just close it down and walk away. He was like a good restaurateur. There's a friend of mine here in
Mm.
this little town of Placerville, California, who currently in this area owns 5 restaurants. In the 15, 20 years I've known him, he's owned 10 restaurants in this area. Not all at once, but
Yeah.
and one of them is a vacant building up on the end of Main Street, been vacant since he moved out. And I said, Jose, does it bother you to close a restaurant? He said, no, no. He said, I want them all to succeed, but when they don't, you close them up and go open another one. I said, well, if it doesn't work, why would you go open another one? I'm a restaurateur. That's what I do. So he didn't take it personal that people quit going to the restaurant I'm talking about. He opened another one right down the street, and it's been immensely successful ever since.
Wow. Okay. Andrew Sales asks, what's the number one tip for building rapport?
Sell yourself. Humor, sell yourself. If you go out to make a friend, if you go to a singles bar to pick up a girl, you don't go in as a loudmouth. If you plan to get a girl, you don't go in as a loudmouth, obnoxious drunk. You sell yourself. Humor, perhaps, or this or whatever, but you sell yourself. Until you make that sale, everything else is a waste of time. So I work, whether I'm trying to get a good table in a restaurant, good service once I'm in the restaurant, or sell you a car, or sell you a piece of land in Arizona. Sold one this morning. Thank you very much. Uh, and Whatever I'm trying to do, first we we become buddies. You and I, the first time we were on the phone together, we spent about an hour. We didn't talk about any business.
Yeah.
We're just getting to know each other,
Yeah.
deciding if I trusted you, if you trusted me, and so on. So that's sort of it. Not phony, fake. You don't say to an ugly woman, "Oh, you're the most beautiful woman I ever saw." She knows better.
Yeah.
You don't say to somebody in a cheap sport coat, "My, where do you get your clothes?" He's embarrassed to tell you where he gets his clothes. But somewhere along the line, you can find something good to say about anybody. I used to play the game with people, make up a business, and say, "Well, I like horses."
Hmm.
Funny you should mention that. We owned two world's champion Tennessee Walkers when I was growing up. Won the championship at Shelbyville, Tennessee, and I know just enough to be dangerous. But what do
Yeah.
you like about horses? And now we're locked. You got children. I got four. You have nieces. I've got, I don't know, 7 or 8, I guess. I have to add them up in my head. You want to talk about politics? I have my political views, but I keep them in my hip
You
pocket.
support Donald
Mainly, I'm
Trump,
a
I
member of the.
support Donald Trump. You support Obama, I support Obama.
Yeah. No, I won't do that,
Well,
but I will.
some
I will
things
talk about.
of them, though.
Yeah, I won't go out on the fringes of either group to share anything. I
Yeah.
heard somebody say the other day to me, it wasn't a business situation, but it could have been. He didn't know that he didn't like black people. I said, "That's interesting. I don't feel that way, but I understand that." And he said, "Why don't you feel that way?" I said, "Well, variety of reasons. One, I was raised well. Two, I'm semi-intelligent. Three, I've worked with black people
Yeah.
all over the world for years. Three, I adopted a black son, uh, uh, Lamont Bowens, who we put through law
Oh,
school. He
wow.
was a drug dealer when I met him, graduated second in his class at San Francisco State Law School, and is now a practicing attorney. And he's as black as his shirt. And we are now campaigning aggressively to make a young lady who's dating our youngest boy to get them married. She is magnificent. Best
Mm.
thing ever happened to him. Speech therapist, wonderful, beautiful lady. And I said to the guy, and she's black. So anyway, I want to make sure I fully understand your position. Why don't you like black people? So, oh, never mind. And he sort of slunk away, and I never saw him the rest of the night. There's a little sales lesson in there. Be careful who you talk about and what
Yeah.
you talk about and so on. You never know who they are. Years ago, we were in a pub, and a guy, I don't know why he thought it was okay to show me the story, but he put pepper in a little bowl of water, and then he put his finger in it, and the pepper backed away. I'm sure there's a geological something reason. I'm only a high school graduate. I don't know what it is, but the pepper backs away. And he said, that's what happens when somebody jumps in a, when an Italian jumps in a swimming pool, all the people spread out. And I said, really? I said, Gigi, tell him your maiden name, Ronzoni. He went down the end of the bar. Another waitress came up and said, "I'll be working with you tonight." We never saw him again.
Yeah.
A bad one, if I can rattle on for a second. I'm going to use one word I normally wouldn't use, but I'm quoting. I got hired by the guy who invented containerized shipping for household goods for the military. Pack up your stuff in Alabama. Next time the doors open, it's on your lawn in Germany. Okay. Containerized shipping was invented the year before that. He got on the bandwagon real quick. So when I left Holiday Magic, he was a friend of my boss and me and so on. He said, Ben, I want you to come do some consulting. So I said, fine. Went over. Now I'm a consultant. I couldn't spell it, but now I'm a consultant instead of running businesses that I own part of or whatever. So I'm sitting in his lobby, and this lady, his receptionist, is rude. Everybody walks in the door and on the phone. And so I couldn't believe it. It was like a comedy skit. Like I was waiting for somebody to run out of the back room and say, "Yeah, you thought she was real."
Yeah.
So I escorted into his office. Ralph Johnson was his name. He's gone now. I'm escorted into his office, and Ralph, sits me down and does that thing of, well, they say you're good, prove it. He says, "So you've been on the property for 30 minutes or so. What are you going to give me some advice on where I can make even more money?" He was already making a lot of money. "What are you going to do to give me some advice on where I can make even more money?" I said, "I got one. Fire that bitch in the lobby." And there was this little awkward moment. He said, "I'd like to, but she's my sister." So you have to learn how to check yourself. That was the last time I called anybody the B word, and the last time I talked about
I
anybody should
meant
love.
bitch
I
is
was
a
real
rapper,
sure.
okay? When my bitch is that,
You
it's
sort
the love. The love.
you sort of got to know who the players are. I learned that, I came from Atlanta and then the San Francisco Bay Area up to this little bitty town. And Gigi, as soon as we got together, I said something somewhere, and she said, "Honey, you can't talk like that here." It wasn't all that bad, but it
Yeah.
was about somebody. I said, "Why?" She said, "We're all interrelated. There isn't a
Oh,
person in this restaurant." Well, she didn't mean, with the eyes too close together,
yeah.
but that's my ex sister in law. This is my brother in
Yeah, I
law.
got
That's
you.
my
Yeah, yeah,
cousin. That's my cousin's wife. I swear to God, they know every. So when I meet somebody in this town, if Gigi's there, Gigi's first question is, "What's your mother's maiden name?"
Yeah.
Because 2 questions later, they were raised in school
Yep.
together. Gigi used to babysit them or what have you. So you just never know. I wish I'd known Gigi before I walked into Ralph Johnson's office and commented on the receptionist. It
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
have
then you
happened.
wouldn't have that funny story to say, man. That's
That's
just,
true.
I mean, you gotta look at the positive. It's like my girlfriend, right? My girlfriend's Albanian, right? My girlfriend's Albanian. There's a little bit of racism with Albanians in Greece, and a lot of times she's sitting with me, and somebody would just blurt out something like, "Oh yeah, it's all these Albanians, the Albanians' fault, and everything like that," or I don't know, some shit like that. And
Yeah.
I turn around like, "You realize she's Albanian, right?" And then he tried to save it, and this is the funny part. He would say, "Well, yeah, it's not actually the people; it's the politicians that's the problem."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, she's the niece of the. And she
Of the
actually, we
Imperial
don't talk
Grand
much, but she
Poobah.
is. It's just hilarious. But I like saying that. I always get in trouble. She always tells me, "Don't tell people that," But
When somebody goes out on a limb like that, I don't help them off the limb. I ask more questions and nudge and push and so on because I
why?
love to watch people
Why?
squirm.
Please. All right, let's move on. Oh man. Okay, so I'm laughing so hard I lost my Okay, so here's one that actually for my sister, for my sister Lisa.
I've been meaning to tell you about your sister, by the way.
She lives in Texas. She's in sales.
Ah,
I tried to get her to read my books, our book as well, and she doesn't. Okay, anyway, so this is her question. How she doesn't like reading. How do, how do you turn cold calls into a prospect? Okay, how do you turn cold calls into a sale if they're a prospect in a list on your system for 3 years, selling them independent living community apartments?
uh, interestingly enough, I sort of do that over in
Awesome.
Nevada. Yeah.
Well, she'll be
Well,
happy.
that's yeah. That's what we're selling, sort of. A degree of that. If you've got somebody, first of all, you got to get with it because if they're at the point where they need independent living for an older person, if you can't close them in 3 years, they may be dead before you double back around and close them. So
I
there
would have
is a
thought of that.
certain urgency to that type of selling. Uh, you might mention that to her. But do I know any shortcuts from learning how to be a professional salesperson? No, and if I did, I wouldn't tell her. You must learn. What you could do if you're really stupid and lazy, like I was when I started, you could find who's doing really well and try and imitate everything they do.
Well, that's the funny thing.
Uh,
She's the best one there. She's actually good
well,
at her
that's it.
job.
That's in spite of herself. Imagine what she could do if she knew what she was doing. Remember
Yeah,
the 4 levels of the unconscious, incompetent, doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know that he doesn't know what he's doing. The conscious competent knows that he doesn't know what he's doing. That's a step in the right direction. The conscious competent knows what he's doing and can replicate it because he knows what he's doing. I'm saying he out of habit to your sister. I should change
yeah,
to she. And then there's the dangerous zone, which everybody aspires to, who knows the 4 steps, which I don't recommend, is the unconscious competent uh, does it, but doesn't know how he does it,
yeah,
and so on. Because then, when the bottom falls out, as it will, as it does for everybody at some point in your life, you won't know how to go back and do what you did so successfully. So it sounds like maybe she's an unconscious competent. I would suggest she correct that quickly because she may not be in her little warm, fuzzy spot at that development for the rest of her life. She may go over here where she's going to have to know how to sell. She probably believes in her product. I wasn't a great salesman when I sold 500 Foley quad cuts, but
mm,
I really believed in it because I was an ex lawnmower. I really got excited about it.
yeah.
And I remembered what they told me about it. Well, so she may be in that position, but it would be very dangerous to not see everything I know about selling, along with you. I have written
Yeah.
and put in a whole bunch of books, ghostwritten a bunch of them, but there's 6 books currently in print for sale right now. Everything I know about sell people say to me, "Mr. Gay, I'd give anything in the world to know about what you know about selling." I say, "Good news. It's less than $100. I wrote it all down. You don't have
Yeah.
to give everything in the world. Give me $100 and I'll give you every one of these, and then you'll know what I know." But see, that leads us up to Dr. Napoleon Hill was staying at the house one weekend in Marin, excuse me, and uh, we're walking through the living room, and on the coffee table was a copy of Think and Grow Rich. I really don't remember, but I probably asked my wife to place it on the table to impress him. We normally didn't have reading materials,
Mm.
books anyway, out on coffee tables. But I said, "Oh, look, Dr. Hill, there's Think and Grow Rich." You know, oh my, there's Think and Grow Rich. I read it every minute. And I said, how does it feel to have one of the best-selling books back then? I don't know if it's still true or not. They used to say it was
Yeah.
second best-selling only to the Bible, but whatever. To have one of the best-selling books of all time. He said, well, I'm humbled by that. I'm more humbled though by the fact that it's one of the best-selling, least read books on the planet.
Yeah.
Everybody has a sentence or two that they've
Again, like the
memorized
Bible.
out of thinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the Bible, right? You know, show me your Bible. Let me see if it's all beaten up and the spines
Right.
cracked and everything. If it's not, we got a problem. I go into people's offices and I can spot a closer's book from 20 feet away, and I'll go, oh, that's an interesting book. The closers, wow. And I go over there, yeah, I swear by it, whether they know who I am or not. I swear by it, and I open it up. It's never been opened.
Wow.
Spine's never been cracked.
Still
No
smell the
underlining, no
paper.
anything. Yeah, they bought it or it was given to them, however they got it, but they don't read it.
Yeah.
Nightingale said in one of his things, if you want to, or maybe he told me personally, both probably. He said, if you want to keep a secret, pardon me, I'm fighting a little allergy thing this morning. You want to keep a secret, write it, write it down, put it in a book, put a copy of that book in every library in the world. Your secret will never be discovered.
Hmm. Wow.
It's all there. It's all been written down. Everything. And now we all carry around in our pocket. I don't know if this is modern or old fashioned, this I something.
Yeah.
We all carry around one of these where everything in the world is available with about 4 clicks,
Pretty much.
right? And most people
Oh,
use it. I see them
she
use it.
has the books.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I'm encouraging her to read it
Yeah.
because she will not be working at the place she's working at for the rest of her life. Won't happen. And unless she retires with a whole bunch of money where she doesn't have to work anymore or doesn't enjoy selling, whatever, at some point she's going to have to learn her skill, learn her trade. Uh, I became the number one salesman at Holiday Magic Cosmetics, along with my business partner, Jimmy Rucker, greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, based on enthusiasm. Uh, and then we learned a few little primitive scripts, but not until I was head of the company and rewrote the scripts did they really get good. And based on that, we were here's an example, Paul. We took a little company, started in a house in San Jose, California, about a year before I joined, and turned it into a company that was taking in $1 million a day in cash in 1965.
Wow.
And how do we do that? We had a good product, quality product. It's competitively priced, about like everybody else's. We sold it to qualified people, women who wanted to look better. And we did it with scripting so that I could pull somebody out of a restaurant or a coffee shop or out from under a car, get them to memorize the script and go tell it to people and bring them to a meeting, which was also scripted, to a movie that never changes. You know, it ran 15 minutes or whatever, and it ran exactly the same, didn't have a surprise ending uh, every time. And 50%, 40, 50% of the people in the room would join. And we had people, one guy, Tony Milano, I pulled off a milk truck in front of the Pontchartrain Hotel in Detroit, asked him how much, because I was doing a demonstration for a class, recruit everybody and anybody. Pulled him off a milk truck, said, how much are you making? He's, time dulls the memory, I think it was $600 a month. Within a year, he was making 100,000. Within 2 years, he was making 300,000. Again, adjust all that for inflation. What happened? Same Tony What happened was a quality product that had a good commission structure, competitively priced, etc. And we taught him scripts so Tony Milano could sell cosmetics and business opportunities as easily as he'd been selling milk.
Yeah. Yeah. Always be learning.
I I take when I go to a seminar and I'm not the one on stage at the moment, I take as many or more notes than anyone in the audience. I was at a seminar a few, maybe over a year ago now. A guy, a friend of mine, real estate investor who teaches people how to invest in real estate. It was 2 years ago because I now remember the first time I used it. He got up on stage, and among the things he covered, I don't even remember why he covered this, was uh, figure out your age in a little graph. And at my age, 85% of my life, if I lived to be the average life, was over.
Mm.
85%. His point was, if you only, in my case, if you only have 15% of your days on earth left, how do you want to spend them? Do you want to be with people you don't like, doing things you don't want to
Yeah.
do, not doing, so and so. And so from that moment on, and I'm sort of past the point of being awed at a seminar. I've heard some of the greatest speakers in front of the biggest crowds. They were buddies of mine. I've said some semi amazing things in front of crowds. So it takes a little bit to awe me. But I write notes because I can always fix up a little something. I wrote that down in capital letters. And that week when I got home, we were invited to a gathering that we've been going to almost every Friday night if I was in town for a long time. And it was habit, and we knew the people. But frankly, that isn't the crowd I would have assembled to spend my Friday nights with. And I said to the lovely hostess, no, thank you.
Yeah.
She said, what are you doing? I said, no, no is a complete word, a complete sentence. It's a whole thought. It's not, no, I'm going to Albania for the weekend. It's no, I'm not going to your house on Friday night. And we've never been back. I'm not going to spend the last, now it's less than 15%, I guess. I'm not going to spend the last 15% of my life making small talk with people I don't respect, like, or admire. So we just said no. So that's, I advocate that in many areas of your life, but that came right out of a seminar when I expected just to go in and hear the same old thing. And they're talking about real estate investment. I wasn't terribly interested anyway. And I wanted to look polite. And when I least expected it, boom, another life changing thing. And it literally has changed my life. You ask me to do anything, I run through a little calculator, goes 15% of your life left. That what
Yeah.
you want to do?
And to get back to a little bit to that question, the truth is the question she asked is not just a one line or one paragraph or one page answer, but there's a whole section in our book that covers that exactly how to do it. A whole section. It's
Mhm.
in the book. It's literally in the book. You
Well,
know.
it's secret now.
Yeah. Well, she's my sister. I'm giving her a hint.
You need to give page numbers. Whenever I mention sales infiltration, say the closers part 2, page 257. I don't want to leave anything to chance. And when I'm autographing books, Paul, that come out of here, you get a kick out of it. I signed Ben Gay the third, and the date. If they bought the 3 book set minimum, I personalize them.
Yeah.
Uh, and their name, a little something, signature, and so on. But then uh, I open up the closers part 2, turn to page 257, and write, what, let's say it's to you, Paul, tell me when you get to this point, and I
Yeah.
sign the book again.
That's awesome. I think I'm going to start
I
doing
get,
that
I
too.
get, yeah, I get very few phone calls.
I'm gonna start doing that.
Oh, it's
Or write a
fun.
little bonus thing, or if you reach this place, I'll give you this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm, that is an awesome idea. So from now on in the closers. All right, and you know what? We have a lot of questions. I'm gonna ask one more question for you, and then and this one's kind of specific. I might actually help out a little bit on this one. Okay, so uh, Gord Eisman asks, how would you approach sales to close coaching services on YouTube? Would you do a call to action at the end? Would you make videos for your channel specifically to selling? What's the best approach without spamming them? And I'll answer this real quick because we're actually doing a video right now talking about the closers. Well, I'm talking about success from Ben Gay the third. Here's what I am doing, and most people do not do this. What I'm gonna do, I have this video, right? I haven't talked about selling the closers one, two, or three. It's actually in the description below, so I just plugged it. But oh well. What I'm gonna do is I am gonna use Google AdWords and specifically target anybody that watches this video with another video that talks about the Closers 3 scripted, okay? And what this will do is it will give the Closers 3 a free sample of it that guarantees you will triple your income overnight. Okay? And I'm giving the
Brilliant.
sample for free to prove to you that it will triple your income. And then once you read it, you can 10x, 20x, and 30x your income. Okay? And this is what we're doing with Ben right now. So at some point, you're gonna be watching somebody else's video, and suddenly I'm gonna pop up and sell you that book. And what that does is, first of all, it creates social proof and credibility because you're seeing me in somebody else's channel. Now you know me because you've seen my videos in sales, you've seen other videos, so I've already built the rapport. Okay? And also, it's not spamming. It is. It's not really spamming. It's something specific that what you like. Because if you watch the video, you like sales. If you're seeing Ben Gay the third, you like Ben Gay the third. You would not be watching this video otherwise. So it's not spamming. Now, what that will also do is when you click on the link on YouTube, it takes you off YouTube so you can go buy something or get something for free. YouTube will penalize your video. You have to keep a certain balance, okay? And this is something people don't talk about, but you have to keep a certain balance, otherwise you'll get deranked, okay? Now what happens is if you send them to another video, you increase your own watch time and YouTube likes that. And then it's okay to send them off your channel or off YouTube because it's a paid ad. And if you pay YouTube, they like that. So that's personally
Yeah.
what I do or what
Uh,
I am doing. I don't know, Ben, do you want to add anything to this?
yeah, when you get into technical things like YouTube and doing this and AdWords and all, as you know, I have my a man has to know his limitations, and that comes right along with my limitations. I've been at this so long. The way I get new coaching clients is I answer the phone because they were
Very
told
true. But
if
your
if
call
if
to
there's a
action,
spot
and
open,
if we translate this video to a sales pitch, where's your call to action?
sprinkled delicately throughout the material. I never make you read. If I write 5 pages of great copy, and I'm confident if you read all 5 pages and get down to the end, you will take action. That's great. And used to do that almost exclusively. But a few years ago, I learned whether it's printed, the internet, YouTube, whatever, give them what I call bailout points. And what I'm saying is, okay, if you've heard enough at this point to buy, don't let me hold you back. Buy. Here's the connection. Here's the whatever.
Don't
If
oversell.
not, yeah, don't oversell. We've sold 600 lots in Arizona in the middle of a desert, uh, and when you call in, because I won't get into a sales thing, but I make you call in by writing a good one ad, and then blah blah blah. I'm trying to get you to leave your name, address, and give you our website. Even in the telephone recording, I say hello, welcome to XYZ development, and so on. I'm going to give you some information in a moment. And as soon as you've heard enough, I want you to hit the pound sign, wait for the beep, and give us your name, your address, your phone number. No commitment, no anything. Now, I'm going to go on, but let me remind you whenever you've heard enough,
Yeah.
hit the pound sign. And then if I get to a real salient point that I've finished, I say, okay, remember, you have an option. Hit the pound sign, wait for the beep, and so on. So it's sort of like those mystical closes people are supposed to be using. I give you, when you've heard enough, bail out. They already know how to hang up.
Yeah.
So if they're not interested, they'll hang up. I don't have to teach them that.
True.
But I do remind, okay, heard enough, get out. Heard enough, get out. Heard enough, get out. I did a seminar in Nevada not too long ago for a wonderful company. I was supposed to speak for 8 hours or something. And I did almost all of it, but I got 40 minutes from the end. And I said they'd heard enough. They weren't going to do most of what I'd already said, and had been given by their management the books, so they knew everything I knew if they could read, and so on. But I got to some point, hit a salient point. They stood up and cheered, standing ovation. And I said thank you and walked off. And when I got to the back of the room, the owner of the company said, "You're supposed to do another 40 minutes." I said, "A man has to know when to get off."
Yeah.
That was that spot.
It's the magician's trick
Nothing
as
I could
well.
say.
The
Yeah,
magician always
nothing I
leaving
could
wanting
say
more.
after this. Yeah.
Always leaving wanting
Uh,
more. And that
yeah.
actually
What was coming, sir, is not going to top that. I'm
yeah.
out of here.
Yeah. And that is also what you mentioned about throughout the sales pitch, giving them outs or bailouts, as you call them. It's the same thing in sales when you're talking one to one, whether it's a presentation, and it's the same in a sales funnel. So you have your video talking about what you're selling, and you have your sign up form. Then you go down and you have, I don't know, you have your picture, right? Where you picture them, you put them into the picture, what they're living, what they can do. Then you go down, there's another call to action. Yes, give me my copy right now. Then you go down to your social proof, and it's like, yes, give me my copy right now. And you have call to actions throughout. It's not by chance. It's taken from old school, real master closers and put digitally on the internet, digitally online. Does that make sense? So yeah,
Absolutely.
Ben, I think we did a pretty long session. I would like to thank you. But before I do that, if anybody wants to get in touch with Ben or read any of the Closers series, please go to the description down below. Check it out. I'm leaving links there. And yeah, you can get anything you want right there. You can even get a free sample of the Closers 3 just by going into the description down below and clicking that link. Ben, it's always great to talk to you. I always learn so much from you. I'm very proud to call you my mentor. And thank you
Oh,
so much.
thank you.
It's very important to me. And thank you for everything you've done for me because you've done a lot. And you've done a lot. You know exactly what you did for me. So it changed my life. It changed my life. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's an honor to be on with you. And heard you say you have some more questions to ask. So I assume we're going to do a follow up, and I look forward to that.
Great. If anybody has any questions, please comment down below. Thanks again, Ben, and we'll talk soon. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.